Meanwhile, this afternoon, the UN General Assembly will meet to vote on a resolution demanding that Russia immediately stop using force against Ukraine and withdraw its military from the country. The resolution is also set to condemn Moscow's decision to increase its nuclear readiness. Now, any resolution that might be passed today would not be legally binding, but does carry significant political weight. Well, covering the diplomatic aspect of this story for us is our foreign editor, Philip Turle. He's with me now in the studio. Philip, what should we expect from the General Assembly today?
Well, first of all, there are 193 members of the General Assembly who will be voting on this proposal against Russia. Now, the reason that this is happening in the first place, this is an extremely rare occurrence at the United Nations. It's only happened 11 times since the UN was created after the Second World War. And the last time it happened was back in 2014, following Russia's annexation of Crimea. So 193 countries are eligible to vote, and a two-thirds majority is needed for the motion to pass. It is non-binding, as you were saying, which means that Russia will not have to take any notice of this if it doesn't want to, but it's the symbolic influence of this vote which the United Nations is hoping will have an impact on Russia, because it knows that if two-thirds of the world's countries vote against its actions in Ukraine, that Russia is becoming more and more isolated on the world stage. Now, Russia is one of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, along with Britain, France, the United States and China. All of those countries were the victors of the Second World War. That's why they're given permanent status on the UN Security Council. But the reason this vote is taking place is because Russia voted against a resolution condemning the Russian action in Ukraine, and that is in defiance of the UN Charter, where a country cannot be seen to be invading another country in an unprovoked manner. So that is why there's been this request for the UN General Assembly to gather, and that means that Russia does not have its veto power at the General Assembly as it does in the Security Council, and cannot stop this vote from going ahead.
Well, let's talk about the Security Council, because there's been some rather interesting talk this week that extraordinarily Russia might actually be kicked out of the Security Council, where, as you say, it is a permanent member. Now, could that actually happen? And if so, how would it work?
Well, in theory, it's extremely difficult to kick out a permanent member of the UN Security Council, basically because of the word permanent, which means when they were put on the UN Security Council, that was a permanent place. But questions have been raised at the UN about the legitimacy of Russia holding a seat on the UN Security Council, because when the Security Council was drawn up at the time, the seat was occupied by the Soviet Union, and it wasn't Russia. And since the Soviet Union was dissolved in 1991, there is no text and no vote in the UN General Assembly permitting Russia to take the place of the Soviet Union to be a permanent member of the UN Security Council. It was just pushed through, taken as for granted that because the Soviet Union didn't exist anymore, Russia was the legitimate replacement for that. So Ukraine has been saying, well, where are these texts in 1991 which allowed for Russia to take over from the Soviet Union to become a permanent member of the UN Security Council? Those texts do not exist. Therefore, Russia is not a legitimate bona fide member of the UN Security Council, and therefore should not be allowed to remain on it. Of course, if there's going to be a vote on this, the big problem is that Russia is a permanent member for the moment and is going to vote against any decision or attempt to remove it from the UN Security Council. So this could go round in circles. I think the big question is whether it is, as I was saying, the legitimate replacement for the Soviet Union or not, and that is something that lawyers and specialists are going to have to get involved in before they can make a decision on whether or not back in 1991 Russia should have been given that seat, replacing automatically the Soviet Union.
Philip Turle, thank you very much.